When Henry Ford walked into his first workshop in 1896, America was a nation of farmers, craftsmen, and laborers. Horses still ruled the roads, and the few automobiles that existed were expensive toys for the wealthy, hand-built by skilled artisans who might complete one vehicle every few weeks. Ford looked at this landscape and saw something entirely different. He didn't just want to build cars, he wanted to democratize mobility, transform manufacturing, and in doing so, accidentally architect the foundation of modern American prosperity. What happened next wasn't just the birth of an automotive empire, it was the creation of a manufacturing philosophy that would reshape civilization itself. The Ford Motor Company's origin story began on June 16, 1903, when Henry Ford and 11 investors scraped together $28,000 to launch what would become one of history's most influential enterprises. Ford wasn't the first to build automobiles in America. By 1900, there were already 30 different car manufacturers producing vehicles for the affluent. The Duryea brothers had been building cars since 1893, and Ransom Olds was already producing 5,000 Oldsmobiles per year using a primitive assembly system. But Ford possessed something his competitors lacked: an obsession with efficiency and an almost messianic belief that every American deserved to own an automobile. His first models, the Model A through Model S, were conventional vehicles built using traditional methods. Skilled mechanics would construct each car from start to finish, a process that could take weeks and resulted in vehicles costing between $2,000 and $3,000, equivalent to roughly $80,000 today. Ford sold just 1,700 cars in his first year, but he was already envisioning something revolutionary: a car so simple to build and so affordable to buy that it would transform from luxury to necessity. The breakthrough came in 1908 with the Model T, a vehicle so perfectly engineered for mass production that it remained virtually unchanged for 19 years. Ford's team, led by engineer Child Harold Wills, designed every component with manufacturing in mind. The engine block was cast as a single piece rather than assembled from multiple parts. The chassis used identical components that could be easily replaced. Most crucially, Ford made a decision that shocked the automotive industry. He would offer the Model T in only one color, black, because black paint dried fastest and didn't require multiple coats. "Any customer can have a car painted any color so long as it's black," Ford famously declared. But this wasn't arrogance, it was strategic genius. By eliminating choices, Ford eliminated complexity, and by eliminating complexity, he could focus entirely on speed and efficiency. The first Model T rolled off the production line on October 1st, 1908, priced at $825. It was still expensive for most Americans, but Ford had planted the seeds of his true revolution. The assembly line that would change everything didn't emerge overnight. It evolved through years of methodical experimentation that transformed Ford's Highland Park factory into a laboratory for industrial efficiency. In 1910, Ford began implementing time and motion studies borrowed from Frederick Winslow Taylor's scientific management principles. Workers were timed performing individual tasks, and every motion was analyzed for waste and inefficiency. Ford discovered that skilled craftsmen spent most of their time walking around the factory, gathering parts, and switching between different types of work. The solution was counterintuitive. Instead of workers moving to the work would move to the workers. Ford started with small experiments, using gravity slides and rollways to move parts between stations. By 1913, he had installed the first moving assembly line for flywheel magneto production. What had previously taken one worker 20 minutes to assemble now took 13 workers 90 seconds total, each worker performing a single specialized task as the component moved past their station. The results were staggering. Productivity increased by nearly 400% almost immediately. The full assembly line implementation in 1913 represented the most significant manufacturing breakthrough since the Industrial Revolution began. Ford's engineers, including William Clan, who had studied slaughterhouse operations in Chicago, designed a system where the entire Model T chassis moved continuously through the factory on a conveyor belt system. The belt moved at exactly 6 feet per minute, fast enough to prevent workers from wasting time, slow enough to ensure quality work. Each worker performed one specific task: installing wheels, mounting engines, attaching steering wheels.
What had previously required 12 and a half hours to build a single Model T now took just 93 minutes. The Highland Park factory became a marvel of industrial choreography, with 15,000 workers producing over 300,000 vehicles per year. Visitors from around the world, including government officials and industrial spies, toured the facility to witness what newspapers called the miracle of modern manufacturing. But Ford's revolution wasn't just about speed. It was about standardization on a scale never before imagined. Every component was identical, every process was documented, and every worker could be trained to perform their role in a matter of days rather than years. The economic implications of Ford's manufacturing revolution extended far beyond the automotive industry, fundamentally altering the relationship between labor, capital, and consumption in America. On January 5th, 1914, Ford made an announcement that shocked the business world. He would pay his workers $5 per day, more than double the standard industrial wage of $2.30. Critics called it economic suicide, but Ford understood something profound about industrial economics. Higher wages would reduce employee turnover, which had reached a staggering 370% annually as workers fled the monotony of assembly line work. More importantly, well-paid workers would become customers for the products they built. I want to pay men a wage that will enable them to buy the product they make, Ford explained to skeptical board members. The strategy worked brilliantly. Turnover dropped to just 16%, training costs plummeted, and productivity soared as workers competed for these coveted positions. By 1914, 10,000 men lined up outside Ford's employment office every day, seeking work. The $5 day created what economists now call the Ford wage premium, the idea that manufacturers benefit from paying workers enough to afford their own products. Ford's manufacturing philosophy created ripple effects that transformed American society in ways that extended far beyond factory walls. The company's employment practices attracted workers from across America and around the world. African Americans migrated from the South in unprecedented numbers, drawn by wages that were often 5 times what they could earn in agriculture. Immigrants from Europe, particularly from Poland, Italy, and Ireland, flooded into Detroit, creating the diverse industrial workforce that would define American manufacturing for generations. Ford established the sociological department in 1914, employing investigators who visited workers' homes to ensure they were living according to American standards, learning English, maintaining clean households, and avoiding alcohol. Workers who met these standards received the full $5 wage. Those who didn't received only the base wage until they complied. While paternalistic by modern standards, this program accelerated assimilation and created a stable, productive workforce. The economic prosperity generated by Ford's system enabled workers to purchase homes, send their children to school, and participate in consumer culture on an unprecedented scale. Detroit's population exploded from 465,000 in 1910 to nearly 1 million by 1920, transforming it into America's 4th largest city.
The competitive response to Ford's innovations triggered an industrial arms race that accelerated American manufacturing dominance and established the template for 20th century corporate strategy. General Motors, founded by William Durant in 1908, initially tried to compete through luxury and variety, offering different models for different price points and social classes. Chrysler Corporation, established by Walter Chrysler in 1925, focused on engineering innovation and style. Both companies were forced to adopt Ford's assembly line methods to remain competitive, but they added their own innovations. GM pioneered planned obsolescence, introducing annual model changes that encouraged consumers to regularly upgrade their vehicles. They also developed the installment purchase plan, allowing customers to buy cars with monthly payments rather than cash, a financing innovation that made automobiles accessible to millions more Americans. By 1925, GM was offering cars in multiple colors and styles, forcing Ford to eventually abandon his any color so long as it's black philosophy. The competition drove rapid innovation across the industry. Hydraulic brakes, electric starters, closed bodies, and improved engines all became standard features as manufacturers competed for market share. The international implications of Ford's manufacturing revolution reshaped global economic relationships and established American industrial supremacy that would dominate the 20th century. Ford established manufacturing plants in England in 1911, Germany in 1925, and eventually in 19 countries worldwide, spreading assembly line methods across the globe. European manufacturers, who had initially dismissed American production methods as crude and unsophisticated, were forced to adopt Ford's techniques or face extinction. The Model T became the world's car. By 1918, half of all automobiles on the planet were Model Ts. Ford's production methods influenced industries far beyond automotive manufacturing. Appliance manufacturers like General Electric adopted assembly line production for refrigerators and washing machines. Food processing companies implemented continuous production systems for canned goods and packaged foods. Even service industries began applying Ford's principles of standardization and efficiency. The economic productivity generated by these manufacturing improvements helped fund America's participation in World War I and established the United States as the world's dominant industrial power. By 1920, American manufacturing output exceeded that of Britain, Germany, and France combined. The cultural and social transformation unleashed by Ford's automotive revolution fundamentally altered American geography, social relationships, and daily life in ways that continue to shape modern society. The Model T democratized mobility, enabling Americans to live farther from their work, shop in different communities, and maintain social relationships across greater distances. Rural Americans gained access to urban markets, medical care, and educational opportunities that had previously been impossible to reach. Young people used automobiles to escape parental supervision, accelerating changes in courtship patterns and social behavior that defined the Roaring Twenties. The automobile industry became the foundation for an entire ecosystem of related businesses: gas stations, repair shops, parts manufacturers, tire companies, and road construction firms. Tourism emerged as a major industry as Americans took automobile vacations to national parks and distant cities. The federal government began investing in road infrastructure, leading to the Federal Highway Act of 1921 and eventually the interstate highway system. Suburban development accelerated as workers could commute longer distances, creating the housing patterns that would define American communities for the next century. By 1927, when the last Model T rolled off the assembly line, Ford had produced over 15 million vehicles and fundamentally transformed both American manufacturing and American society. The price of a Model T had dropped from $825 in 1908 to just $290 in 1927. A 70% price reduction, while wages had more than doubled. This represented the first time in human history that a complex manufactured product had become cheaper and more accessible over time rather than more expensive. The economic principles Ford pioneered, high wages, mass production, and mass consumption, became known as Fordism and influenced economic policy worldwide. Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal incorporated Ford's ideas about the relationship between wages and consumption. Post-World War II economic policies in Europe and Japan explicitly adopted Fordist principles to rebuild their economies. The assembly line concept spread to virtually every manufacturing industry, enabling the mass production of everything from electronics to pharmaceuticals to processed foods. Ford's legacy extends far beyond the automotive industry he created, encompassing a complete transformation of the relationship between work, wages, and consumption that defined modern industrial society. The middle class that emerged from Ford's high-wage manufacturing jobs became the foundation of American prosperity for the next 50 years. The standardization and quality control methods Ford pioneered became the basis for modern manufacturing quality systems, including total quality management and Six Sigma methodologies still used today. The supply chain management techniques Ford developed to coordinate thousands of parts suppliers established the template for modern, just-in-time manufacturing and global supply networks. Most significantly, Ford proved that industrial efficiency and worker prosperity were not competing objectives, but complementary forces that reinforced each other. By 1930, the automotive industry directly employed nearly 4 million Americans and indirectly supported millions more in related industries. The economic multiplier effect of Ford's innovations had created the foundation for America's emergence as the world's dominant economic power, a position maintained throughout the 20th century. Henry Ford didn't just build cars. He built the economic engine that powered modern America, demonstrating that the greatest empires are built not just on products or profits, but on ideas that transform how entire societies work, live, and prosper.